This conference will
Okay,
now be recorded.
so we are all here uh, for the Selenium C# course, is it? So let's talk about the automation and then the course details, and then in if time permits, so we would also look at certain high-level concepts. Okay, let me share my screen. So please confirm if you people are able to see my screen.
Yeah, it's visible.
Yeah,
Visible?
visible.
Great. Okay. So let's talk about this comprehensive Selenium C# automation testing. Uh, so what we learn, what we gain from this uh, is something which we have given here, right? Course syllabus. So wherein we talk about Selenium, uh, the Selenium WebDriver, setup and installation regarding the tools and the packages that we need to install, right? And the creation of the test project. And then we talk about the basic concepts of the C#, wherein we would go through all the basics. We brush up our basics because these are something which are very much pretty important whenever we try to learn, attend the interviews, and as well as in our day-to-day activities, right? So basic OOPS concepts, the programming concepts are must and should for learning, right? So that is something which we would go through. And then the WebDriver basics. So I'll talk about the WebDriver in the coming sessions. So wherein it also has some interfaces, methods, inbuilt methods, which we can use in order to interact with the application. So it can be a web-based application or a mobile-based application. So we would talk about those. Mainly WebDriver is for interacting with the web application. Okay, so what is this elements, everything we will talk about those, right? So all these basics. Along with that, we also deep dive into the Selenium WebDriver concepts and then locating of the elements. So when we learn about what these elements are, and then we will understand how to locate these, how to identify these elements, right? There are various ways of identifying the um, elements, or rather than I can call them as the fields. Like if you take a form, so on the form, so you would have certain fields, right? So if you open any of the registration form, so you might see certain fields where they ask you to fill in some details, right? So you fill those details and submit it. So you have a button called submit, and then there are various other fields, right? All these fields, we call them as elements. Okay, so we'll talk about those in depth, and then interacting with those web elements. So once we are successfully, you know, able to identify the elements, then we would start, doing that interaction with the elements and see what kind of actions that we can perform on those elements, right? And then working with the weight concept or the synchronization, majorly we call it as. So we will talk about those, why this is required and what major role it plays in our day-to-day automation activities, right? And then the advanced element interactions. So there are some advanced concepts. So like mouse move. Right now, if you see, I am moving my mouse, right? So here and there. So all these mouse actions, these are certain advanced concepts which also would be covered. And then we would also deal about a browser window. So let's see if I have this browser window. So I'm able to open multiple tabs, right? You people can see it. Right now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tabs opened here. Able to see it, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
how to deal with this multiple windows, how to interact with the elements when you have your application on multiple tabs, right? So these are something a bit advanced, so we would also go through them, right? And then comes from number 10, it all deals with our framework, right? So now what is that framework? So we will also talk about those, like what kind of frameworks we have, and we also talk about the design patterns, and then we come to the page object model. This is one of the design patterns that we have. Uh, so we would talk about the page object model, which is a very famous and common framework that most of projects they work on. And we also uh, deal to learn about the data driven way of testing, um, and then logging and reporting. So how many of you have experience with manual testing? I guess you can raise your hands. So within this batch of 22, I see 10 people who raise their hands. Okay, 9. Okay, fine. So now, when it comes to testing, so I don't say specifically that reporting is something very much important only for the test automation, right? So the people who have this manual test experience, probably they can understand that we do report, we do generate the test reports, we do generate some metrics related to the testing defects, right, bugs, and then we provide those metrics and dashboards to the management, right? Correct. So how would we say, like, when if we are testing certain application, so how would we say our testing is complete? It's only through the reporting, right? So we define each of these test cases, we scope the test cases, we would define the scope, and then once we had our planning done by defining our scope and coming up with the test cases, then we go for the test execution whenever it is required, whenever it is planned for, right? So during that execution window, we execute the test cases, be it manual test cases, functional test cases, or the automated test cases, right? So we do that, and then we step ahead with generating the metrics. What kind of metrics you would? Probably the test results. So that is one of the primary metrics that we share, right? So each of the test case, its outcome, whether it is pass, failure. If it is failed, again, whether you have a bug for it or a defect for it, right? All these details we would provide as a test report. So in the similar way, when we run the test cases, when we execute the test cases automated way, we also report them, right? Even after executing them through automation, so still we are here to define whether the test case is pass or fail, right? If at all it is failed, if at all it is failed, we report a defect or a bug. Again, we would see when we raise a bug or when we raise a defect for it, that's down the line, a different perspective altogether, but still. So for generating those test reports, we have some third-party tools like extent reports and Allure reports. These are the famous tools. And apart from these, so even the cloud-based test management, end-to-end lifecycle management. When I say it's not just about test lifecycle, it's about the entire agile lifecycle. So to manage the agile lifecycle, we have some cloud-based tools as well, like Azure DevOps, Jira ticketing tool, right? And so those are some of the prominent tools where again we would be able to integrate these reports, or there are inbuilt test reports that these cloud-based tools like Azure DevOps and within Jira we can able to generate. Okay, either way we would be able to generate the reports. It's all up to our feasibility and the ease of use, and as well as about the a requirement from the project, probably some customized metrics that we want to generate, right? Custom based metrics. So then we go for these third party reporting tools, right? So which would allow us to customize our reports as per our needs. Clear? So this is something about the logging and reporting. Suppose that we also would discuss about this exception handling. So now exception handling is one of the most important feature that we need to understand, right? Because this is way how you define whether your test case is resulting in pass, fail, or any other status, right? So in order to confirm that, first we need to
उद्या
handle
लवकर
the
जायचं का
exception.
उद्या लवकर जायचं आहे
So once and only when we handle
नाही
these
का
exceptions properly and report them to the test report,
जायचं नाही का
log them to the report, then only those would be captured,
आज बुधवार आहे
right? So this is something which is very much important. So at code level, how we handle the
नाही जायचं का
exceptions.
उद्या
So there are
असं सांग की
various kinds of exceptions, system-based exceptions, or
नाही जायचं
some
सांग
could
की
be
सरळ
code-based exceptions. Can, is somebody
कालच
speaking?
मंगळवार झाला आणि
Can
यानं
you
काय
mute
सांगतोय
yourself? Okay. Yeah. So exceptions is something which is very much important. It's core heart of this entire thing. Even though you come up with a framework, even though you come up with the page objects, even though you come up with multiple other stuff, if we are failing at handling those exceptions, so exceptions at that those can be from the system level, or those can be from the application perspective, or those can be at the coding level as well, right? Based upon the code at runtime, there could be some failure or errors that it might throw. So we require to handle those exceptions. So we would see in depth what kind of exceptions usually we get and how to deal with them. And there are numerous other exceptions which people just simply ask in the interviews as well. So we will try to understand those. So what kind of questions we would get at interview level as well at each of these phases, right? I would be able to share you certain details about it as well. And then the best practices. So I already said, like we talked about the design patterns, right? So one of the design pattern is page object model. So yeah, there are various other design patterns. We will talk about them. So mandatorily, it is not required like every pattern we have to incorporate within our test automation suite in the framework, right? But having that knowledge is appreciated, because it depends. When you go for some interviews, they might concentrate more on the design patterns and start shooting up the questions. Do you know this? Do you know that? So at that time, we should be able to provide or give the answer to them, right? So, and test case organization and structuring, and then maintainability and the reusability of the test code. So this is very much important for us, right? Maintainability and reusability, correct? So we would also talk about uh, the approach, test approach, that ideally we should be considering whenever we try to come up with our test automation suite, right? And then, yeah, that's about the best practices. And then, yes, the GitHub. So again, so once we come up with some test framework, a skeleton for the test framework, and then when we start building our test cases, so how do we, where do we maintain it? We may not maintain it in our local, right? Because uh, it's not just when you work at a project, it is not just you who would be working there. So it is a team. As a team, so there should be some centralized repository where we can maintain our code base such that people can use it, right? So that's where GitHub comes into picture. It's a centralized repository where we can maintain our code. I mean, when I say maintain, where we can load our code into the repository and have it as a common code base, which can be utilized by all the resources within your team. So there are certain ways how we create those, branches, and there are certain other actions in the gate, like how we add the additional files into the gate, how we pull them, how we push them, what is this push, what is this pull, what is the clone, right? What is this creation of branches, and what is the branching mechanism, best branching mechanism that we need to implement, right, at the GitHub, because multiple people would be working. So if everyone is allowed to just push their code into the, the main code base which we have uploaded into GitHub, then probably, so if 10 people, let's say, like, are working in a team, so all the 10 people are pushing their code directly onto the main code base, then probably it would turn into a mess, right? So wherein there is a high chance for code breakage, and then you might also get some false positives. So even though it is not an error, probably it would start showing you that the tests are failed. So nevertheless, so we have to maintain a good mechanism in creating the branches and the branching mechanism as well, for our maintainability purpose, right? So we would understand about that GitHub. And then integration. So integrate integrate the automation framework into CI/CD. What is this CI/CD? Anyone ever worked on it?
Continuous integration, continuous development.
Yeah,
Continuous
correct.
deployment.
So continuous integration and continuous development. So what is continuous development? Who would be doing it? As a SDET, when I say SDET, what is SDET? Test automation engineers are called as SDETs, right? Software development, engineer, and test. So you would be SDETs when you learn automation, get onboarded into some of the companies. So they call you people as SDETs. So what majorly you would do? So you would develop the code, right? So who develops the code base for testing? Automation scripts are developed by you people, right? You people would be developing the scripts. And CI, continuous integration. So what is this continuous integration? So continuous integration and continuous development. So continuous development is possible with the help of number 15, that is the GitHub, a centralized repo which can be shared with multiple people, and they keep working on their code. They keep pushing those details those details into the repository. So that's where this continuous development probably focus on. And what is this continuous integration? So where this would be focused on? This would be focused on integrating your entire script which is there in your GitHub, right? So integrate that particular script to your pipelines. It could be Jenkins or Azure DevOps pipelines, or pipelines within AWS as well. And even if somebody is using GCP, it would be GCP as well, right? All this cloud domestic end-to-end agile management tools, wherein you would have your repositories hosted, and you would have your pipelines developed. We would talk about those. What is this pipeline? Why we call it as a pipeline and other stuff as well. So, but that's something which is part of DevOps. So, have you ever heard the term called DevOps?
Yes.
Anyone?
Yes.
Yeah. So, what they do? What would they do?
DevOps mainly take care of the
DevOps.
release process.
Uh, DevOps is a project management tool
Mhm.
we are using.
Okay. Anyone else? So, someone
Dev,
said about
for DevOps, we're
someone said.
managing both developing and operation.
Right. So DevOps is a team. They do not have anything specifics, right? The team doesn't have any specifics. When I say specifics, they doesn't need to use a specific tool. There is no specific tool for them. It can be Jenkins one day, it can be Azure DevOps the other day. It can be AWS, or it can be a GCP, or it can be any other SAP based, right? Or any other new tools that get into the market. They do not have any specific uh, process or a way, right? So they just try to handle the operations and make the developer's life easier, right? When it comes to it's not just about the deployments. They also do work on process automation. They also do work on setting up with the environments. Infrastructure, right? And infrastructure based automation. That is like, let's say you are trying to run your scripts, and you faced an issue with the memory and the CPU, right? So to whom we would reach out? So we reach out to the DevOps team, ask them to increase the memory and CPU cycles such that it would be easy for us to run our scripts, right? Because scripts are getting stuck, bottleneck problem due to the memory, memory constraint. So we reach out to the DevOps team, right? So DevOps team, they handle this continuous integration part, right? Continuous integration with continuous development is something which is handled by the DevOps team. Then why it is part of our uh, testing framework and test activities? What role we play here? When it is something related to DevOps, but still it came here, right? Into our scope. So how it came into our scope? It is into our scope because uh, the code that we come up with is something related to the test automation. Okay, and what we do is we can just raise a request to DevOps team, ask them to integrate this, and then leave it as is. I mean, they can work on it. DevOps team can work on it. Okay, so no offense in it. So it's majorly the integration of the automation framework into the Jenkins or Azure DevOps or any other cloud diagnostic tools is something rests with DevOps team. You can raise a request to them and then ask them to work on it. No offense on it. Okay. So still in certain projects, there may not be a DevOps team. Okay. There may not be a DevOps team available which can work or focus on the testing related, integrations or the pipeline integrations, CI/CD, right? So wherein there might be required for us to chip in and integrate our scripts to the Azure DevOps or the Jenkins for this seamless CI/CD integration. So we will talk about the phases as well, various phases involved in it, various processes involved in it, the stages and the steps that are involved here. So we will in detail discuss about them as well. And then the last one is the interview prep. So interview prep is something which, right from the beginning, from each of the modules. So once the module is completed, probably we would have a bit of discussion on the interview questions as well, right? So on the fly, we would discuss them as well. But as a whole, again, we would support with a bit of, interview preparation as well, right? So yeah, this is about the course. So any doubts here related to the course?
So,
Will there be a focus on specific project during this training, such as testing an e-commerce application like that?
So I would provide you the live demo for most of the real-time things. I mean, real-time application level, interface level work that we do, right? So I would provide that. Definitely, I would provide. So you would have that demo, but uh, post that. So I would also provide you some uh, what would I say, like some work to do, right? So some tasks to do, I would assign to you people, so such that you would also need to come up with that practice, right? So there could be some very much important things like exception handling, uh, data driven testing, page object model. I cannot say something like one of the portion is not a critical thing right here, because whatever these are there, these all are very much critical for us, either at the real time where you implement those, and there would be some concepts which are required for us at least to know to crack the interviews, right? Either way these are required, right? So you would see those, you would look and feel the things, right? So while providing these live sessions and demos, but along with that, I would also give some small tasks such that you would get well versed with them and then get yourself practiced, and uh, you would have some good understanding on the concepts. Clear on this?
Sir,
Yeah,
one
yes.
question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sir, when do we go for C, C hash and Java, sir? Like this application, it supports C hash. Some other application, it supports Java. How do we know about it?
Right. So we will discuss on those. So when we start our sessions, right? So right from the setup installation, so we would focus on these lines, right? So when we go with now when we talk about this Selenium introduction, so we would definitely discuss about these topics as well, right? So it is not just about this. We would also discuss about our uh, what is that automation approach that we need to take, right? There could be various automation approaches. It's Swapna, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So yeah, so we would definitely discuss about those, and then only we would go to the Selenium introduction. So first of all, we need to understand the automation process, approach, and other stuff, right? So we would deal with that in the initial classes, and then I would start the introduction to the Selenium. It is not like we would just jump off into the Selenium and then you know that we would swim the unknown ocean, right? So first we need to focus on our basics, very uh, basics. We need to understand why this automation is required. We need to also understand, see, when you go for interview, and when people even when I interview the people, yeah, so I just do not jump into Selenium concepts. Oh, you are a Selenium C# guy, or you are a Selenium Java guy, or you are a Selenium Python. Okay, so let's start with our coding. Let's start with our Selenium concepts. That's not the way how it would be in the interviews as well, right? So not just for the sake of interviews, it is for the sake of your better career progress, right? So you have to understand the basics of the automation testing itself. Why automation testing is required? What kind of uh, what we say? What kind of approaches we can derive, right? Now there are some of folks who are well versed with manual testing. So I would just look out to you people whenever I need any inputs related to the functional automation. Sorry, functional testing, right? So maybe I mean somewhere down the line, if there is some process that I explain or correlate to the functional testing, so at that time, so I might require your inputs as well. Yeah. So just we would have those discussions and learn further, right? Learn from each other, right? So there are some functional testers already, so we can learn the concepts accordingly. Yeah. Yes. Somebody asked about the framework. Definitely. So we should cover, no? So that's part of our curriculum. It is there, right?
Sir, one
Where is it?
last question. Like for one web application, we can use both Java and C Sharp.
No, cannot. See, Java is totally a different programming language. And again, when it comes to C Sharp, it's a different language, right?
Yes,
So
sir.
now, yeah, so when you focus, let's say like uh, somebody, right, uh, has an application which is developed on Java. Okay, let's come back to our basics. Okay, let's talk about the this particular course. Somebody is asking about API automation. So API automation is not part of this. So API automation is a separate course. So this is specifically about Selenium C Sharp. That itself means that it is UI automation, right? UI test automation. We primarily focus on UI automation. Clear on this part?
Excuse me.
Who is that? Sanjeev.
Yeah.
Okay. And are we covering N unit spec flow? We would
Sir,
cover the
you
N unit. We would cover definitely N unit because that's one of the uh, you know uh, frameworks, unit testing frameworks that widely used. Spec flow is something which again it's advanced concept which is not part of this particular curriculum.
Okay. So we are not building the framework on BDD.
No, we are not building it right now in this curriculum, at least in this
Oh,
curriculum. Okay.
okay.
This we would
Sir,
primarily focus on NUnit. You would also try to achieve the parallel execution, blah 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 stuff, right?
Yeah.
Using NUnit. Yeah. So spec flow and the BDD approach, that's again a bit advanced. So that is not part of this course.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So who
you are
else?
saying
Any other
something. If
question?
the application is developed in Java, then
Right. I'll just come to that part. So
Mm.
okay. So what tools I have? It's only timer. So what is this? I cannot annotate, is it? In this GoToMeeting? Uh, oh my goodness. I guess there is no annotation. Okay, fine. I can't write. Or okay, maybe I can use my Microsoft whiteboard. Great. So somebody has a question. Do we still have? Do we still have demand in Selenium with C Sharp? Yes, we have. We have it. Even I work for one of the projects where I use C Sharp for automation. Okay. You're able to see my whiteboard?
Yes.
yes.
Okay, great. Okay, test automation. Okay, first thing is why automation is required. Anyone?
To reduce manual efforts.
Reduce efforts. Okay, what else? Anything else?
For regression.
to do the repeated test cases.
Okay,
And
repeated test execution. Okay, what else?
and identifying the defects in very fast manner.
Okay, fine. Yeah, early identification of
Bugs.
defects. Great, good point. Yeah. What else?
To save the time.
Yeah, that's efforts, no? It's
We can
related to
reduce
efforts only.
we
If it
can
is
reduce
more
duplicate
time,
work.
right? That's repeated test case execution, right? Same thing. So, okay. So if it is more time for you to execute, right? More
To
time for
perform parallel.
execution, then definitely you would have directly proportional your efforts, right? It's nothing but your money, correct? You charge for the client some money for doing it, right? No, nothing is free, correct? In the software world. So only open source tool Selenium is free, right? But when we come with this automation testing and other stuff, so as a uh, project management, so what we do is we charge some amount for our efforts, right? So whenever it is the time for your execution is more, that is when you do it in a manual way, right? So now, do you say like every execution that we do manual way takes more time compared to automation? Is it so?
Yes. Yes.
Do you think so? Then you are definitely wrong in your perception. There can be the scenarios or the test cases probably which can be done much faster while doing it manually rather than automated way as well. There can be. It is not just like every test would be related to your saving of the efforts, right? Which would be automated. So you need to change your perception in it. So it is not that every execution would reduce the effort, okay? But relatively, when we take our scope, let's say like you have 90% of your test cases automated, right? Out of which probably 10% of your 90% of automated test cases may easily, effortlessly can be executed in manual way. But at the overall, when you see in overall, it would reduce your efforts, right? It would save your money as well, correct? And the amount of, when the amount of efforts are more, obviously you would require more resources to execute, right? So that's something which is replaced by the automation for all this repeated test cases execution, somebody has said. So does the automation only mean about test case automation? No, right? So along with this test case automation, it can be about the process automation as well. And also any other, right? What we call them, any other utilities, right? Any other utilities that we develop in order to reduce our efforts, in order to reduce our manual efforts, any other utilities that we develop, that is also called automation. This is all in scope of our automation,
Any
right?
example for this, sir?
Any
Utilities
example
and
for that? Okay, let's say uh, you have your test data, okay, getting generated, or let's say like somebody submits a registration form and those details are there saved into the database, okay, some database, it has been shared into some table, let's say table 1. So now in order to verify whether the submitted details, whatever you have submitted, so you have test data and that data is submitted, right, in your scenario. So you would already know what details you are filling in your form, right? You submitted it. But in order to verify whether these details have reached to the table, now what you need to come up with? You need to come up with some DB utility which can help us to retrieve the data from the table, right? This is one utility. Now,
Are
in
we
order
using
to,
sorry,
sorry,
are we going to use SQL? SQL?
it can be anything. See, I'm just giving a high level example here, right? It
Right.
can be
Okay.
anything, even reading a file. Okay, reading the data, read data from XLS or JSON or XML or CSV. That can also be a utility, right? These are generic methods. So if I write some code for connecting to the database, or if I write some code for connecting, for reading the data from Excel file or a JSON file, so it it is a generic utility which can be utilized for any JSON file, right? Right? Reading the data from a file. So read the data from a file. If I, let's say, like I have this, okay, something like this. So some details are there here. See, okay. So now this is one file which has some questions, okay, and this is another file which have some other questions, right? This is some other file which have some interview questions probably, okay. So now what I'm doing, I'm reading those files. So reading mechanism is same. I need to open the file, read the data, right? Whichever file it is, be it XLS, be it JSON, whatever file it is. So what I would do, I just open that file and then start reading it, right, from top to bottom. So it's the same thing, similar way. If I need to automate, if for suppose for JSON files, I need to read the data. So if I have come up with a script to read the data from the JSON file, so that is a utility, generic utility, which can be utilized across any of the JSON files, right? If I have 100 JSON files also, I would be able to read the data from all these 100 files, correct? Run that script for on each of these files, read the data. It would read the data for me, right? It would hold that data into some object. We will talk about it, like what these objects are, what all this stuff, right? But on a high level, I'm saying these could be the utilities, right? It can be any database. Somebody might use Postgres, somebody might use NoSQL, somebody might use what is that? Microsoft SQL, right? Any kind of databases it can be, right? Clear on this part?
Yeah.
Now I'll proceed further.
Sir,
Okay.
sir, can you
So what?
repeat, sir? I'm not getting
Okay.
how this one related with the automation. Utilities with automation, I'm not getting.
Okay. So you have your test data. Okay. So where you would have your test data?
In the Excel file.
It can be in the Excel, or it can be in the JSON file, or it can be in form of XML or CSV, any format,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Some external file. Okay. Let's say you have your test data itself. Okay. This is very simple example where you maintain your test data in XLS now. Okay. Okay. So you agree with this?
I
Now,
agree.
in order to read the data from XLS, so what is this? Reading of the data from the XLS is not nowhere related to your test automation. Your test automation is related to your application, your test cases, right? What is this? From where it came into picture? This is an additional automation that we would be doing with relate to our framework, relate to our process. So we have kept a process where we want to maintain our test data in XLS, right? Now when we maintain our data in XLS, so during your testing, you require to read the data from the XLS. Then only you would able to, push those data into your test cases and then execute them, right? So if it is a manual way, then I would open the file, I would read it by look and feel, right? But when it comes to automation, so I have to come up with some script for it, right? Clear now?
Yes,
So
sir.
this is something we call it as utility,
Mm.
generic utilities. These are
Yes.
nowhere related to your test automation. Your test automation is entirely different. You would anyway, test automation is where you would automate your test cases, right? But these
Yes.
fall as a generic utilities that we come up along with our test automation. So as an automation tester, we also need to look into, this is just one example, right? As an automation tester, we also need to look into any other activities in the day-to-day, uh, you know, project activities where functional testers or even developers, right? Whether they do any of the activities manually, right? And now we can evaluate the scope of automation there as well, and then try to come with some utilities, right? Utility is nothing but a generic script that we would come up with, which would ease our day-to-day activities in our project. They necessarily doesn't need to be part of your test automation, right? But still, you would go evaluate and you might create some utilities, which would save efforts. Everything relates to the efforts. We need to reduce the efforts. That's the major goal, right? Apart from your test automation. Clear on this? This is a major scope of the estate. Clear on this part?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Got it.
Yeah. Got it? Now, from here, so somebody asked me how we would able to define whether we go with C# Selenium or Java Selenium or any other programming language, right? Who is that? Swapna, is it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So what we do? So in the initial analysis, what we would do is first we would see what is the technology stack, tech stack our application is into, right? This is the first major thing that we need to evaluate as a estate. What is the technology stack? If somebody has appointed you to, analyze, right? First, initially, we need to analyze which tool we need to use and which, what we say, like language we need to, right? Now, when it comes to Selenium, let's take Selenium itself. When it comes to Selenium, it can use JavaScript, Java, Python, C#, right? All these languages. So maybe you are well versed with Selenium and you would say like, okay, I want to go with Selenium. There are many other tools as well, like, automation tools in the market other than Selenium, which are also being used, right? Now, when it comes to uh, Java, you say some framework like JUnit and some other unit test frameworks, right? TestNG, somebody might hear about this. TestNG, very famous, right? For Java. In the same way for here, it is MUnit, that is Microsoft unit testing, and then NUnit. These are the famous frameworks. Okay, and for Python again, PyTest, like this. So you have some frameworks. Now, how do you define or say that okay, let's go with Java or let's go with Python or let's go with C#? So now you analyze your technical stack, tech stack of the application. Let's say your application is built on JavaScript front end, right? Front end in JavaScript, HTML, CSS, and some other scripting languages, front end scripting languages, and your backend is in C#. When I say backend, it is about your services, microservices. We will see how it is. Okay, what this microservice is, I will show you on the browser itself when we load some application. So I would definitely show you. Keep this in mind. Okay, so I say like your backend or your services, API services, let's say, right? So are developed in C#. And your database is in Postgres. Now you say which language you choose. Based upon the technology stack, so your entire backend is on C#, right? Correct? Are you able to understand it?
Yes,
Your
sir.
entire
So,
API services were developed on your backend code, everything is in C#. Just your front end, which displays, is in some other language. I mean, some scripting, front end scripting language. Rest all is within C#. Now,
yes.
so based upon this tech stack, you would have some front end developers or full stack developers, we will call, right? Dev team. So now your full stack development team is with this knowledge base, right?
Yes, sir.
So it's obvious for us to go with C# primarily. If we want to proceed, we would focus mainly on C#, and then we will see what tools are available in market, right? Tools
Yeah.
availability
Selenium with C
and
hash.
resource availability. Resources also is much required, right? I would say yeah, I want to use C#, but I am not getting any resource who has C# knowledge itself. Then it's waste of time, right?
So in that
So
case, what
first we
tool
will
it
see
is
the tool
required, sir?
availability. So we would go for some other
C sharp is
technology
very less
based upon.
demanded in market.
No, not less demand. So we have enough demand on C# as well.
Sir,
We
supposing
heard many times like Java with Selenium is more preferable
See,
than C sharp. This is what we
Java,
hear.
that is because previously Java was the uh, you know code base on which most of the applications used to run. Okay, and people started with Java Selenium automation uh, down the line somewhere around some 9 years ago, 10 years ago. Okay, at that time there is no open source, no other open source tool. It was Selenium with Java, which just it was a budding automation tool with open source, right? So most of the people, they just learned that okay, Java, we need to learn Java automation, so that is Java Selenium, that's all. So now there are many other tools as well. You are just talking about C#. So I would say like right now, other than Selenium, there are many other prominent tools that are there in the market which are giving tough job for Selenium. Okay, there are some drawbacks with the Selenium as well. And being a test architect, I would definitely suggest, I can definitely suggest some other major tools as well in terms of performance, in terms of stability, right? So it all depends. Now, because the other tools were giving more tougher times to Selenium, the Selenium entire, what we say, like the fraternity or the community, rather than fraternity, I can call it as community. So the community is coming up with again, some other new solutions incorporated into Selenium as well. By looking at the other tools features, they started coming up with some other new, I mean, similar features to add into Selenium, right? So it's a day-to-day process where every tool would evolve from its, previous features, whichever it has. So in the similar way, there are applications, lots of applications which run on C#, .NET framework, .NET technology. So it's all about Microsoft. So when people use Microsoft tools and Microsoft applications, definitely it would be C# Selenium. Okay, so there are ample number of applications that run on Microsoft technologies where it is recommended to use the Microsoft what is that language, that is C#. C# is one of the .NET frameworks, right? It runs on .NET
Yes, sir.
frameworks. So that's where you would go for C#. When it is an application which is developed, that's why I said backend. It is not nothing but your application. When your application and the services are developed on Java, you tend to go for Java Selenium. If it is something developed on Python, so we tend to go with Python Selenium, right?
Sir,
But
one question.
go ahead.
Yeah, but suppose if the application is developed on C hash, then we have to go with Selenium with the C hash. Other than Selenium with the C
Right.
hash, do we have any other tools
Yeah, we have.
to
I mean,
support?
you can still see, you can still go with other languages as well. You can come up with Python, Selenium. Does Selenium say I don't work? When you write a code with Python, I don't want to execute your automation scripts. It don't say, right? It just supports. It's all about your tool that you have selected. Now Selenium or Playwright. Nowadays, Playwright is more prominent again, which is giving tough job for Selenium. Playwright is also there, which supports TypeScript, JavaScript, Java, Python, C#, and it also has record and playback option where it generates the scripts. And if you have generated in Java, you can convert it into Python. If you have generated in Python, you may convert it into C# or any other language again. So these are some features that some other tool is giving up. So by evaluating all these features, your ease of doing work, right? So you would select the tool, right? So major prominent factors that play a major role in selection of your language with respect to any of these tools, because be it Selenium or be it any other automation tool, they support multiple languages. So our main problem would be once you go with some tool, again, it's all about your what language we need to select, right? It can be any language, but based upon our technical tool stack of the application, so you tend to go with the similar language, right? Why? There is another thing that is about this resources, right? I talked about this resources. So what this means? So you need to also have your resources with the technology stack, right? So when you already have your dev team, so in case if we have any challenges during our test automation, right, it would be very much easier to fetch some help from developers as well, right? That is one more thing. Dev team. So whenever there is a challenge in your automation, you can definitely bring in them, ask them why it is happening like this, or can you help with this in resolving this. Probably they can also, have their hand in it, right? Why only SDETs need to work on test automation and their challenges? Probably some developer also can help us working on it. It is not something mandatory or rule that only SDETs need to handle the automation, right? Unit testing, something which developers handle usually, right? So similar way. So if you have any challenges during your test automation development, script development, definitely we can buy out some help from dev team as well, because they also know C#, right? That's something also would be a fetching point for us, one of the parameters, considering which we would select our language. Clear on it? Yeah, clear?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So considering all this, so we would just, select our tool stack, and as well as, now I can say like, okay, go with Playwright, but I need to have the people who have good experience with the Playwright, right? It's a budding tool. Maybe I don't get enough resources, right? Who have good understanding on the playwright. So I cannot risk my project. That's where still you have that you know trend, like where you see lots of projects, test automation projects, they run on Selenium because they have large community. When it comes to the Selenium tool, so it has a large community, open community, right? So large open community with JavaScript, Java, Python, C Sharp, it supports.
So,
And then
one more question.
mm,
This playwright also was developed by Microsoft, right?
Microsoft, yes,
Yeah. So, also one more tool Microsoft developed initially, I remember, coded UI, something like that, but they
so
had deprecated it.
that is scrapped now. That is not there, nowhere in place.
Yeah, not
So
there. So,
coded UI again, it supports C Sharp, and it also helps in automating the desktop applications as well, but they have scrapped it,
yes, sir.
okay, altogether.
Yes.
And then they came up with Playwright, which is a tough competitor for Selenium nowadays. Okay,
Okay.
so
And
yeah,
also
so there
Microsoft
are
has another tool
again
that is Power Automate. What is the scope of that?
Power Automate is altogether different. It is all about process automation and workflow automation. So that's all different. Okay,
Okay, okay.
that that is not something with REST with SDITs. Power automation is entirely different. Yeah. Okay.
Mm,
So
okay.
this is how we select a tool. Okay. On a high level, I have given some inputs on how this test automation, why it is required, and also I have cleared your perception about the manual testing. So manual testing is very important, and there are certain cases where manual test cases would be much faster compared to automation, right? So there could be, so that's where I said like 10% of your 90% of automated test cases probably might be uh, achieved much faster when it is executed in manual way. There can be, okay. And now there are factors like repeated test cases, you said, early identification of the defects, that is also said by you people. All are correct. So because we have these all advantages, so we are opting for the test automation. Though it is costly, I say when it is in the planning phase, right? So when your coverage, automation coverage, the more the automation coverage, then you would see the results, right? So just by automating a single test case, I cannot say, okay, I have reduced your efforts, right? It doesn't make much difference or show much difference to the people. So that's where we would talk about that, like what is the scoping, what concept it would be, and then in further class. So we would talk about test scope and how to identify those, how to also come up with the scope metrics, right? I mean complexity metrics. Probably something for coming up with the efforts. You would also do for manual, test planning. So you would come up with some complexity metrics, right? So we'll talk about those, how we come up with them in the next class. Okay. Yeah. So I'll stop here.
So just curious about your background, sir. Um, you didn't
Okay.
introduce
Sorry, I
yourself.
didn't give. I didn't introduce myself. Sorry. So bad at it. Yeah. So I have around 13 years of experience in QA. I mean, almost 14 years now into QA. So started my career with TCS, then into Accenture, and now in Deloitte. Okay. So I work for Deloitte, and yeah, so I'm a QA manager right now. It's just my hobby or interest to share, the real-time experiences and share my knowledge to the people. So that's where I opted for, training, right? So training the people. So this is upon interest I have joined here. Yeah.
What's your name?
Prashant.
Prashant. Okay, great. Nice to meet you.
Yeah. Nice to meet you all. So I hope you people would join for tomorrow. So we will continue. Yeah.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you very
Prashant.
much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you,
And
and thank you very
with
much.
respect to the course, and the payments and other stuff, course fee and the payments and other stuff, please reach out to the Isha Training Solution. Yeah. So they are in the WhatsApp group, no? So you can talk to them, reach out to them. Yeah.
We have few
Okay.
more questions on the chat if you can answer. Tomorrow that is
Uh-huh.
fine.
Is a deep and thorough understanding of C Sharp is required for Excel in this course. To excel in this course, uh, not deep, probably the basics. So that's why we start with that, no? With the basics. Amresh, are you
So I'm
here? Or
I'm asking.
okay.
So I'm currently working as a Scrum Master, Scrum Tester. So
Mm-hmm.
since last couple of years, around 6+ years, I'm handling developer and tester. But I'm not coming
Okay.
from a big background of developer or
That's
tester.
okay.
But I do have
That's
understanding.
definitely okay. So yeah, so definitely, I mean, some understanding is required on C Sharp. That is about those basics. So definitely, we would uh, work on those basics initially, right? Then only we start with the actual, Selenium concepts and automation. So it would help, no problem. And will you give support and teach creating automation framework from scratch? That is something which we would see, no? So it's a part and parcel of our course. So I would showcase you people some, I mean, there are various frameworks. So maybe we talk about the data-driven framework and with NUnit, right? So that's something, it is a framework, basically. So we see that right from scratch. All the features that the NUnit has, right? So it also has some additional features in the package. So we would see that. It would be great if you cover SpecFlow framework as well, because I can see a lot of job descriptions as for SpecFlow. Okay, so this is something which, yeah, I consider it as an advanced concept. That's something not in the current curriculum, but definitely if you opt for some advanced test automation course, probably you would find even the SpecFlow, I mean, Cucumber framework and other. People would discuss about lot about many other reporting and the end-to-end uh, process automation along with the test automation. So that's something bit advanced. But this course do not have it, but I can help you with some high-level understanding of the SpecFlow. Yes, definitely. I mean, team would share you the recordings, so you would get the recordings daily, and as well as the course materials, they would keep sharing you. So I would inform them when and where the material need to be shared. So accordingly, the team would share you the materials and recordings every day.
So the course
Yeah.
will be on the same time every day?
Yes. Same time. So we would try to start sharp at 9, such that it would be good for us to even at least if we end by 10, and if there are any questions, probably we can spend for a few more minutes in resolving those questions and then wind up our class, right?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? No? Yes? No? Okay. Great. So I will stop the recording and as well as the